Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Innovate to Survive, a Modern Approach to Manufacturing Marketing. I'm Cam Mackey with ISEA. Welcome, everyone. Just a couple housekeeping notes here. On the right side of your screen, you're going to have a little chat function, and please feel free to use that to talk amongst yourselves, ask questions of our experts today, or just to make comments. I think you can even have emojis, so keep it fun. And we will track that throughout the discussion so we can tee those up for the speakers. I'm Cam Mackey, CEO of the International Safety Equipment Association, and excited to have a good discussion today about a topic near and dear to all of our hearts, which is the crazy upheaval going on in the buyer's journey. We'll get into the details later, but spoiler alert, a lot's going on, and we couldn't have two better experts to walk us through it today. So first, I want to introduce Thad Kalo. He has over 2 decades of experience with digital marketing, which for digital marketing, that means he was there at the very beginning. He's CEO of BOL, which is a fantastic B2B marketing agency, and he and his team help companies of all sizes develop meaningful digital strategies that have an impact. Thad, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Cam. And I feel like you're calling me old, but I guess I'll take it.
No. Just a founding father. That's a good thing. And then also excited to welcome to the virtual stage Lee Zucker. And so Lee is a vice president with Drift, and Drift, as you can see, is hosting our session today. So Drift is actually at the forefront of some of what we're talking about. So making the customer experience personalized at scale using conversational AI, which is pretty remarkable. So Lee, welcome. Excited to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Excited to be here with you and Thad and the audience. So thanks for having me. Great.
So the why are we here? Let me kind of set the purpose before we jump in and have a good dialogue. So first off, you notice there's no PowerPoint, so no death by PowerPoint. So we'll have an engaging discussion. And again, feel free to drop questions in the chat. The why we're here is simple, but it's really important. There are some bold statements we made in the abstract I just kind of want to repeat. Number one, how your customers are buying has changed dramatically over the last several years. For some companies, your sales reps are getting about 5% of the customer's time during their journey. That's not a typo, didn't misspeak, 5%, so a tiny fraction. And because of that, there's a huge upheaval going on in terms of the emphasis we need to place on marketing versus sales. So these are pretty provocative statements. Maybe Thad, I'll ask you to kick it off. So let's maybe give a little more perspective and walk everyone through what we mean when we say the buyer journey is changing. Like, what's all the fuss about?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And this is a real interesting time for anyone in a growth role, right? Whether you're in sales or you're in marketing, but specifically for marketers, because that's typically the function we serve, although we do work with executives in the sales capacity as well. It's exciting. I mean, frankly, there's a lots of changing, and you've indicated some of the statistics out there. But at the end of the day, there's something that's shifting, right? And in our opinion, there's a fundamental shift in terms of the power balance, which is customers have more control than they ever have had in the past, right? And those fundamentals come in 2 forms. One is control itself, and the other one is autonomy for choice, because there's more choice than there ever has been. So what's happening with the growth and explosion, obviously, of digital and incredible technologies like conversational AI, which Drift has brought to the forefront and is a leader in, is that they want to gain back that control. They want to be served the way they want to, where they want to, and how they want to, right? And so our job as growth leaders, right? Not just marketing, not just sales, but as growth leaders, is to understand those patterns that are shifting and be there where they are the way they want to, because we're all humans at the end. We're all consumers, even though we're in this world of B2B, right? So I think it's incredibly exciting. I think it's incredibly important that marketers step into this role of being the advocate for their customers and the choices that they are looking for as we interpret what is going to be the best buyer experience for our best customers.
That's great. And maybe, yeah, Lee, your perspective on that. What are some of the, the specific things you see changing and how customers are researching, buying, and, some of that personal experience that Thad talked about?
Yeah, couldn't agree more with what Thad is saying, especially around how we as B2B buyers, sellers, marketers don't just turn off our consumer hat. There's actually, I'll give a quick plug of a show on Apple TV Plus. It's called Severance. And the characters don't know their work selves from their outside selves and vice versa. Maybe some of us we operate better ideally in that situation. But the reality is when we're buying software, when we're marketing our products or selling our products, those buyers, they don't have, in Severance, they call it innies and outies. They don't take off those hats. They're still consumers at the end of the day. And so some of my background at Drift and in my career, I launched new verticals and go-to-market strategies, and have focused a lot here at Drift on manufacturing. But still, what I say, no matter the vertical, is think about the absolute best consumer experience that you've had recently. I typically think of Amazon, or I think of like Marriott, Bonvoy, like hotels, where I'm a loyalty member. They know my preferences. They greet me by name. I get like a special perk when I travel for work every once in a while. Or like Amazon, I can chat them. I can call customer service. I also have Ring, and they know that I have that, and they like link everything all together, and it's just completely seamless. And so how can we learn from those like B2C or consumer experiences that get us as consumers coming back all the time, like eager for those personalized experience, and translate that to our working world where it's not completely direct necessarily, but there's some things that we can start to pull at. So I think that like the way that we operate as consumers really dictates how we prefer to buy and sell and do business in our working world as well. And we just need to figure out how to do it more.
And I think the friction that's created right now, Cam, is raised expectations in the inability of folks in the manufacturing world. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it out there to meet the needs and level up to those expectations of these buyers and the buyer journey that they expect to have. And for those who can capture that, it's a huge opportunity, right? To get out in front and to give those buyers that experience they're looking for. And those that can't are playing big time catch up and in my opinion, are going to be struggling. And I think that's the unique situation we're in.
And Thad was talking about something about like buyers wanting to act like on their schedules and speak to someone and operate on their timeline the way that they want to be sold to or the way that they want to buy. And I think specifically in this industry, where like an average sales price could be anywhere from a trinket or a consumer good to a multi-million-dollar, oil rig or piece of construction equipment. And I saw Rahul mention like a McKinsey study here. A McKinsey study that I love a McKinsey study that I love to reference is one that talks about buyers' interest in self-serving and the amount of money that they're actually willing to spend for their business through digital means and self-serve. So like you can look at like from a consumer standpoint, you can buy a Tesla in a minute. Maybe not in the bitter cold anymore based on like some of the reports, but still you can. But what McKinsey found is that a majority of people that they surveyed are willing to spend over $50,000 in a B2B buying experience, totally virtually, without speaking to anyone. At 20% of the people surveyed are willing to spend over $500,000, so $500,000 or more, without ever speaking to a sales rep and only using digital means to do so. That's just a massive shift from what we were seeing even a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So and we've definitely seen that in the safety equipment and PPE sector that my organization works with. There's a lot of personal fashion has come into PPE where people are caring more than ever before about how they look in their PPE, how it makes them feel, how it fits. And so it makes sense that it's not just a product, but it's the buying process. So inevitably, in our attendees, there are probably going to be some skeptics thinking, this isn't going on. Any early warning signs that either you can point to say, here are some things, either like leak in your funnel or any other warning signs that you can ask our attendees to look at to say, maybe this actually is going on in your business?
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is the one where it is most painful, and that's revenue and deal velocity, right? I mean, I think you see a lot of companies that are struggling with keeping up with what they have had delivered in the past in terms of quotas and or pipeline they're generating. And then the velocity, like continuing to move those along to close, right? So if you just look at the fundamentals of what drives a business forward, you should be able to see some pain there. And I think often the manufacturers that we work with do, and they're trying to figure out from there, what do we do? Is it hire more sales, do more trade shows, or do we try to find this more customer-centric way of giving those buyers that we need to win the best buying experience that they're looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm going to share another stat here that I think is kind of mind-blowing for especially this industry, is that 70% of the buying process is actually done anonymously. So like you don't know, no one knows like where they're going, who it is, and how they're interacting with your organization when they're not speaking with you. And then also the average B2B buying journey has 27 different touch points. So if 70% of the process is anonymously and 27 touch points, could do the quick math. Like that's a lot of points when your buyer is not interacting with you or you don't know whether they are. And so like the fact that like the train has left the station, like this is what's happening. And digital means and digital paths for capturing that intent and identifying who that is, like obviously exists. It's a matter of like how you actually do that. In terms of the warning signs, though, Thad was leaning into this around where is the most pain. Well, think about like if you're spending money in marketing, where is that money driving toward? Is it to drive to a website? Is it to drive to a case study? Is it to drive to a meeting booking? What's the conversion on that? How, like, what's the cost per lead in that strategy? Or if marketing, hey, the result is like, let's get them to our website because our website is the best place to learn about our company. And if they're on our website, then yeah, they'll definitely be in for talking to someone. Well, what's the conversion on the website? And how are people then engaging with a person live? And how is the internal team tracking that and identifying who's on the website and reaching out with more valuable messaging? So I always think looking down that full sales funnel or marketing to sales funnel and finding out based on industry standards, where are we above average, where are we below average? Those are signs that, hey, there's something we got to change and there's a different way we need to manage our potential buyers and our customers, because customers need to be catered to and personalized as well. The last thing that I'll say here is I train my sales team that after this call, what are you going to do? Like, we had this call. How do you feel? Here are some next steps. Okay, now what? What do you need to read? What do you want to read? Where are you going to go look? And ask them like how they're going to do their due diligence. And it tends to be like, I'm going to look at your competitors. I'm going to go on their websites. I'm going to read their case studies. I'm going to contact them, get some coach. So, but if you could like bypass that or make it really easy and make your experience better than anyone else's, is the way I always think.
Yeah, these are really good suggestions, guys. And I think one of the attention grabbers for me, Thad, is what you mentioned about trade shows a couple minutes ago, because, obviously the trade shows have changed over the last couple decades, even before COVID. But still, there are mega shows in a lot of industries. There's ConExpo, there's NSC or ASSP, kind of pick your acronym soup, where even if they're not the only place to launch new products or interact with customers, they're big ones. So what impact do you see this having on how companies use trade shows as part of their either demand generation or kind of part of that whole customer experience? How does this change that?
I'll share. I mean, look, trade shows, right? I mean, some people love them, some people hate them, right? And traditionally, from a functional perspective within a manufacturer, the sales team loves them because they get out the door and flex their relationships, right? The marketing team hates them because there's so much work that has to happen, and any little detail that is missed shows up big time, right? So let's be honest, right? Like trade shows, there's a love-hate relationship with trade shows, and I get it because I've been on both sides of the fence from a functional perspective when it comes to trade shows. But the shift that I'm seeing, and it's not completely mature yet, this is what this is how we're feeling and how we are addressing trade shows with the manufacturers that we work with. It's shifting from this role of introducing a buyer to a brand or a new product or new service offering to more of a support function that delivers around trust and brand, right? So the way we see trade shows working is we're now bringing existing prospects that are 50, 60, 70% of the way through the buying process to meet with us at a booth, look us in the eye, shake our hands, and know that we're legitimate and going to serve them, than it is years past where that's where we were actually meeting them for the very first time. And there's lots to unpack there, but fundamentally, that's the largest shift we're seeing as we work with brands in the manufacturing industry and how they're using trade shows. Because frankly, the numbers are shrinking in many instances, not all. And you're getting higher quality because the right people are there for a reason, right? So you have to make the best use of that. But that's the fundamental shift that we're seeing at this moment. Good.
That's great. So I think, you guys have done a great job outlining, scary stuff is going on if you're, not thinking about this thoughtfully and reallocating your resources. And you're both really gave us some nice red flags to look out for. So maybe let's talk next about what companies should think about doing differently. And, before we get to the fun stuff like software and marketing strategies and data, the elephant in the room here is culture and sales versus marketing. I mean, it is, we all know it's sales and marketing, but oftentimes in companies it's, we're competing for the same resources and credit and all that. So maybe, Thad, I'll go back to you, but, for a lot of manufacturing companies, it's, sales first, and often field sales first. It's very personal, handshake based, so how do you navigate that shift where that doesn't necessarily completely go away, but where you're trying to enable these experiences and these relationships digitally? So maybe walk me through that minefield.
Sure. This is a bit of a rant for me, and I enjoy the question because, fundamentally, why we're here, why we're at this moment is because it has driven success, right? Let's think about this. Sales has been the rainmakers of these large manufacturing companies, and they get the majority of the credit. We get it, right? That has what has built success decade over after decade, as well as engineers, right? They're the geniuses behind the products, right? So many of these organizations are sales and engineering focused, right? They get the credit for, driving the business forward, for all of the innovation. But what's interesting and unique at this moment, and that's why I think we're having this conversation, is lots of things are changing. And there's a new opportunity for a new hero in this moment. And in my opinion, right, it's this notion of who can best understand the customer and reach them and engage them and bring them in, right? So eventually as they hand it over to sales, because, many of these more complex sales, you're going to need many solutions architects and engineers down the road. But at the end of the day, right, the moment right now is what needs to be is customer obsessed. We need to obsess with what the customer needs are, and their needs are shifting from this traditional handshake, we'll meet you at a trade show, to I want to self-educate. I want to be smart. I actually want to be slightly entertained along the way too. It can't be dry and boring, right? And I want you to bring me in. And at the right time and right place, I will take a demo. I will talk to someone on the solutions architect team. But that's the shift that's happening. And the notion of being customer obsessed and functions that align to what the customer's needs are, I think are going to be the heroes of the future.
Awesome. Lee, how about you? How do you navigate this rebalancing of sales and marketing?
Yeah. Well, going back a little bit to the trade show comments and the love-hate relationship, I love trade shows when it's not in my budget, and then I hate trade shows when it is in my budget. And reason why, like the things that Thad said around sales and the ability to shake hands and nurture a process, but also the reason why like I have that hate on the budget side and why like marketers are pushing on sales, because God, it's really hard to do that follow-up. It's really hard to ensure like that the ROI is fully proven outside of like this deal was in process and it's moving along, it's nurtured, and like we ended up closing it, and like it wasn't the first touch, it was maybe like the last touch done by a trade show to Thad's point. And so one of the things that we actually did at Drift, obviously it's a technology company different from a manufacturer, is we got rid of our attribution to marketing and sales.
Wow.
Yeah. So we know like but it's everyone's pipeline, right? And we look at amount of pipeline that we need for a rep to hit in order to like get to their next quarter's bookings and all that. And the reason why we did that is because we feel like it's everyone and we have to like nurture through, but we also have made it really easy for marketing to enable like the nurturing of leads and hit like the goals that they're trying to do and incentivize it, which incentivizes them and sales to get the quality leads and the quality opportunities to like create a booking. So ultimately it's ensuring that like the teams are aligned and that it's more efficient and easier for them to do their jobs in terms of pipeline building, lead and pipeline converting, getting like the sales team what they need, as well as like the marketing team what they need. So how do you do that? You make both of their jobs like more seamless and easy. And like, yeah, you implement technology and process so that it is seamless. And it's not just like the cold handoff, but it's proven that like a leader opportunity or contact is really well nurtured in the funnel. So a salesperson really wants to take that meeting or that lead. And then it's not marketing like banging down the door and saying, hey, salesperson, like, have you followed up with these marketing qualified leads that we met at the trade show? They're going to say like, no, they were tire kickers. Well, what if they weren't? So like, how do you make sure that those tire kickers become nurtured or real opportunities that the salespeople trust?
You know, Kim, if I could, I'd love to double down. I mean, think about what Drift is doing right there. I mean, that's big. I mean, that's huge. I mean, they're out on the forefront, right? And they're leading and no surprise, right? They've got great technology and great leadership. But, you know, that's a huge fundamental shift for so many folks in manufacturing organizations when, you know, we're all fighting for our pie and what type of credit we're getting in this motion of revenue, right? And driving revenue and driving scale. And I'm going to put that as kind of a flag on top of a big hill, because I think that's where we should be headed, right? Like that is, you know, not where we are today, but that's a mountain we should be climbing together. And the closer we can get to that and the conversations around who our best ideal customers are, right? Our ICP, how we align together and go to market motions, right? How we support each other to eventually land where Drift has landed. I mean, that's the future, right? I mean, that's what we should be thinking about. I love that, Lee.
That is fantastic. I remember sitting in a conference a few years back with heads of sales and heads of marketing from like big multi-billion-dollar industrial companies, and we did a share of hands, like, you know, whose sales and marketing, you know, leaders got you know, at the table and agreed on common metrics with common definitions, and no one raised their hand. And I mean, it's the same. So you have turf wars. You have, even with, you know, the best intentions, just you kind of lose sight of the objective. So brief detour, gentlemen. We got a great question on privacy, which we haven't addressed yet, but you know, obviously this is a critical issue, not just in the EU with GDPR, but in other, you know, parts of the world. So as we start to think about, you know, personalization, we'll talk a little bit more later about some of the technologies. What should our listeners keep in mind in regard to GDPR and other privacy regulations when you're thinking about personalized or account-based marketing program? And Lee, maybe you kick it off.
Sure. So the death of the third-party cookie, which has been a conversation for years. Wonder if it's like a cat with 9 lives, just continues to stay there. But it will eventually go away, and like GDPR has made it really challenging to continue to support third-party cookie. The transition there is like opt-in personalization and first-party cookies. And that's where you get people to want to opt in to being identified and start going through a process. So from like an ABM standpoint, from a one-to-many outbound marketing perspective, you got to think about how do you get someone to opt in to a more personalized, high touch, like authentic experience to be contacted. Well, you have to drive value through their buying journey or their exploration journey. The challenge with that, though, is if you do that manually, that's really expensive in terms of just like time and people resources trying to do that. Whether you have like an outbound SDR org, or your AEs are required to do a certain amount of like dials a day or visits a day or visits a week. It's a lot to actually get that going. So you have to build the trust digitally in order for them to actually opt in. So I'll give you an example here of like how one of our customers did that, because this was an audience question. This is clearly not scripted. But Emerson is one of our customers, and they increased their conversion rate by 3x in terms of emails that they captured via their content and their website. And they've had over 600 meetings booked. I think that they're 2 or 3 years in with us. 600 plus meetings booked solely through their website. So those are people actually opting in to give their email so that they can get more personalized content and to have personalized experiences, and are volunteering to enter into a sales cycle. That doesn't happen unless you build like the digital equity and trust for them to do that. So the combat to GDPR and following someone around the internet is support first party cookies, but also get your potential buyers to opt into a personalized experience when they're ready, and figure out like what that path is to get them to trust you and want to do that.
Yeah. And that resonates because it really, a lot of it does come back to content and building that, trust based on relevant content. Because we all see it, there are a bunch of newsletters we get, guys, where it's not for us. It's, speaking to a different segment, but they're probably those few things we each get where it's just, they get me, they get what motivates me. It's timely, it's relevant. So, point well made. So I guess the next kind of step on this journey, so we've talked about, there's this dramatic change in the buyer's journey. We've talked a little about some of the cultural work that needs to be done, and a little bit about personalization. So let's start to get where the rubber meets the road. Building a program that focuses on marketing impact. We don't have 4 hours to do this, guys, so we're not going to be able to cover everything. But Thad, I want to turn to you. Someone who's had 20 plus years experience helping companies build marketing programs that deliver impact. What are some of the recommendations you have as someone saying, great, I recognize there's a shift going on in my program. What are some of the steps that I should take? The discussions to have internally with customers, et cetera. What are the few things you recommend someone does to start to frame up what to do?
Yeah, I love it. So, I think there's 3 fundamental pillars that will support, anyone in a growth role. Number one is and we love acronyms, right? Ideal customer profile is really digging into understanding who your best customers are today and tomorrow. Because the challenge that many manufacturers have is that they've been using data of the past, conversations and relationships of the past to define what is today. And your best customers of the past may not be your best customers tomorrow. So having a true, data analyst and data-driven approach to like, where are you today? What does your product roadmap look like? And how you align that to your best customers of tomorrow is critical. Because on a side note, this may be, incendiary, sales is going to claim it's, their relationships, right? Because that's the equity. That's what they bring to the table. And I get it. That's a fundamental, human nature, right? But I think it's time to question whether, those customers that you're going to be going after and looking to drive revenue or upsell from are going to be your best customers of the future. So that's the first pillar, is really understanding that and gleaning good insights from it. Then secondly is your go-to-market motion, right? And I think for most, and I will unpack this in a moment, taking a more account-based approach to go to market is going to support efficiency, deal velocity, and personalization, because you're taking more customer obsessed motion than you are just a lead gen. Hey, we want to put this white paper out there to drive leads because we have better feeds and speeds, right? So that shift in, thinking about how you actually support the buyer's journey in a go-to-market motion through the lens of ABM, and I think that'll be something that we should unpack in a moment here, is the second pillar. And then the last one is this thing we focus on and obsess with at the agency, which is accelerated impact. It's not enough today to just show that you're actually driving pipeline or revenue. It's efficiency too. How fast are you getting from point A to point B, right? Because there's tremendous pressure on growth roles in every organization today, right? So this notion of accelerated impact and measurement, and we can talk about the 5 layers of how we measure and prove our impact to the business, but in an accelerated way, I think are the fundamentals that every marketer or anyone in a growth role should be thinking about. Who is my best customer? How do I support them in a buyer journey? And then how do I measure the impact of the business so I can go back and get more resources and frankly respect, because we have the opportunity to be the hero of tomorrow.
Love it. Love it. Lee, how about you?
Yeah, Thad, there's one thing that you said that that resonated, and we, do deal with this in a lot of our, like different industries that we work with, but especially in this one where it's a very heavy relationship-based sale, and people go from one organization to another because of their relationships that they can bring to the next one. But where we've seen this, like within Stanley Security, within Emerson, I mentioned within Cornerstone Building Brands, there's one in particular where Stanley Security like felt similar. But what they found, and the reason why we created a case study out of this, is that 80% of their traffic that they had that personalized experience with the chat. So obviously disclosure that they're a customer of Drift. 80% of that bot traffic were new contacts. But what's interesting about that is 60% of that traffic were new contacts at known accounts. And so when you think about and then so 20% are known contacts at known accounts and 20% are new contacts at new accounts. So the fact that like there is so much there's always new people flowing into an organization, especially as macro times like change. You never know how buying cycles are going to change. And so there's a lot of value in having the tools in place to see around like the corners where you might not know there's new players part of an RFP process. And like that influence can really drive a difference in terms of how you market to an organization and how you sell through it.
Love it. And so Rahul here has clearly he's spying on our notes here because he's like perfectly teed up the next issue, which is diving into ABM or account-based marketing. And so his question, I'll just tee it up for those who aren't reading it. So any insight on getting an ABM or account-based marketing program in place for an organization that's just starting to move into digital maturity, and they might not have, all the resources, processes, et cetera. So, you want to do ABM and do some of the personalization that we've talked a little bit about. So, but you don't have all the time and money and maturity you'd like. So Thad, where maybe maybe a little context on what ABM is and
Sure.
some recommendations for Rahul and others.
Yeah. First of all, just hire a great agency. So wink, wink. But no, it's much more than that. First of all, let's define it. I mean, it's building and optimizing a personalized buying journey for your best target accounts and then scaling that, right? And frankly, the most important element in when you begin to peel those layers back is alignment, right? You've got to align a couple of things. First, you've got to align sales, marketing, customer success. Who are the best customers? How are you going to take a single motion to support them throughout the buyer's journey as they stick with you and you get to upsell them, keep them for years and decades, right? Super important. How do you then align your technology, right? To understand the intelligence that's driven from a chat to then, feed that back into Salesforce so your reps can actually have meaningful conversations around what is important to the buyer, right? So the alignment is so critical from a functional perspective, but also from a technology perspective in a buyer, journey perspective in ABM. And then you think about campaigns, or at least we do as an agency, right? We think about the types of campaigns. There's 1-to-1 where you're going after, 5 to 50 accounts. There's 1-to-few where you're going after 50 to 200 or so. And there's 1-to-many where you're doing 250 to 600, right? Once you start to get into 1,000 accounts, that's more like lead gen and is a little bit different than a traditional ABM motion in our opinion. And the last is just understanding we like to define them as like the 7 pillars of success in driving an ABM program, right? Because campaigns will sit on a program. Number 1 is strategy and function alignment, which I just mentioned. Number 2 is like clearly defining the metrics that are most important to the organization, because every organization is going to be measuring something different as it relates to how they're going to, invest in and expect returns on an ABM motion, if you will. Account selection and segmentation. So like within these accounts, like are you going to verticalize it, right? And then begin to personalize that journey based on verticals. Then is the activation, right? We like to talk about that, right? In understanding how we're going to actually get, exposure to these accounts and put, our message and market to the right individuals at the right time. There's creative and content, right? What is the experience you're going to put in front of them so you can personalize it as you go, right? And then from there, there's the data and analytics and insights, and I would call orchestration. And that's where I think it gets real interesting for the drifts of the world, where you can help them take the next best action, right? That's what, really getting down to personalization for us, right? And maybe oversimplifying it is saying, after we understand where this account is or where this individual is, what's the next best thing we can put in front of them? How can we give them something of value so they can feel educated and smart as they're moving through this buyer journey? And often it's, the experience of answering great questions that they have in a scaled manner. Like that's hugely, a huge velocity driver, right? And then last but not least is the technology infrastructure that supports that. And in our opinion, you need, an ABM platform, you need intent data, you need a great CRM tool, and then you need, the scaled technology like the drifts of the world to help personalize those experiences as you go. You can get to things like landing page personalization. There's a couple of other areas that are worth, mentioning, but that's how we think about ABM. But the most critical component for us, as we see companies that have been successful and others that haven't, is the alignment. Hey, we know who our best customers are, and we're going to begin to design an experience for them. And we're going to measure the impact of their engagement, but also the impact of the efficacy to the business that we're supporting.
Love it. Love it. And Lee, maybe just a little, because you're the kind of the personalization expert, conversational AI, just maybe a little more detail on some ways you've seen that work and support ABM.
Yeah. So FAD and BOL and Drift have worked together on a number of our mutual customers, and the success of a full strategy through a BOL Drift combo or BOL and not Drift combo is like clearly successful, but that it is a strategy, and the guidance Raul is for you or for anyone trying to stand up an ABM program is that you need that cross-functional alignment to support that. And you need to set expectations of timeline and investment in order to get the value back from it, because it's worth the investment and it's worth partnering with a BOL of the world to help you do it and do it right. But it's a pretty decent lift. Now, I do think that there's baby steps that you could take. And I think that there's ways to hack a bit of an ABM strategy. And that also is a lift more, maybe it's on you or someone on your team, but how can you pick 10 accounts and really tailor ultra personalized messaging, ultra personalized white papers with logos, put some paid search against it. If you have a chat provider or a customized landing page provider or a creative agency that you work with already, set up some of those custom landing pages. Do it on a very small test bed to get a sense of whether this feels good and it's yielding some results. And then start to tune that and then scale it even more. I think that there's a lot of ways to do it, but going whole hog into a program is a big lift, but there's a lot of value to it, and that's why we do it too.
If I could double down on that for a second, one of our clients is Baker Hughes, and that's exactly what happened. So first of all, that's great insight, Lee, and that's exactly what they did. They wanted a proof of concept, and the most critical component is they had one individual who was a customer success manager who put on the hat of the customer and said yes and no to things, so, based on the view of what would be most valuable to that individual, where they were, right, who they were, at what stage they were in the buying process. And we proved it out. Like, hey, actually, we were able to engage with 49 of the 50 accounts we're going after, and they have started to consume our content and spent more time on our site and engage with chat and so on. And from there, got the buy-in from the executive team to go bigger, right, and to make an investment and to change the go-to-market motion from solely lead generation to an account-based approach, right? And the numbers were huge. I want to say in less than 9 months' time, they closed 3 incredibly large deals that delivered multiples of millions of dollars in revenue, and the return was like something like 1,300%. That fundamentally changed the way they went to market at that point going forward. So I love that notion of like, hey, don't put your neck all the way out there, right? There's a little risk in doing a proof of concept and hacking it, as Lee said. But eventually, if you do that even reasonably well, you're going to see better data and better insights and performance, such that you can take a much bigger leap and build a full strategy and plan.
Love it. And guys, are there any nuances of, obviously a lot of B2B manufacturers sell through channels, and in ICA, our members either, just use distribution or use manufacturing reps and distributors. Any nuance here of doing ABM when you have an indirect go-to-market model, or does it still work just the same?
My point of view on indirect and distribution model is you need really good routing back to the distributor who's actually doing the final sale for that account or that region, territory, product. But ultimately, as you're doing outbound around like for a specific product or brand, they're going to come back to the brand's website to do their due diligence, or brand case study to do due diligence for the most part. Like if they're new to a brand. Now, granted, if it's an existing customer and you're going after them from like a distribution standpoint, that might be a little bit different. But like for net new logos, I think it's partnership with the brand that you're selling on that journey. I think that and Thad, you might have more insight into it. I think from like a distributor standpoint, there's probably less brand heavy things to do to drive them into your funnel. But from my perspective, the best like ABM strategy in a distribution model is pairing both distributor brand, having the right routing channels, and ensuring like that the overall brand is on board with that strategy driving to you.
Yeah, no, agreed, Lee. And I would add, there's a couple components that make it slightly more complex in some scenarios, Cam, and sometimes even heavily, like a lot more complex. But the handoff is critical, right? Like in terms of driving engagement and intelligence, then hand over to the distributor to have an intelligent conversation based on the experience that was driven. To Lee's point, they're going to engage with, the manufacturer for some time, most likely, right? So that piece is interesting, right? Co-marketing is incredibly important in those scenarios to build that trust. And then last but not least is tracking, right? Like if I think what's critical is understanding what I call pull through as you begin to like invest these dollars in campaigns to drive engagement of your ideal customers, get them engaged, and then begin to hand them over to distributors. You better know how their close rate. You better understand the velocity with which those deals actually, return into dollars, because that's going to then allow you to better understand who your best distributors are, specifically in the digital world, as they can maybe keep up with the motions that you're moving. But measurement on that end is going to be, incredibly critical.
That's great. And maybe at this point, let's turn to some of the questions that we have from attendees. We have a few in the chat that I'll address. Then we had several when folks registered, they submitted. So Laura has a great question here. In a world where customers are digitally spammed, and Laura, maybe change that word from customers to everyone. We all get a ton of email. Any thoughts? Thad, I'll go to you first. Any thoughts on where to rank email marketing as you think about your kind of portfolio of tactics? So lots of email, lots of junk. How do we help untangle this spaghetti for Laura?
Yeah, look, I think email is interesting because everyone's been claiming the death of email for years now, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be dying anytime soon. Let's put it that way. The simplest way I can answer that question is to get into a more data-driven motion around segmentation, right? And there's a couple of axes which you will want to segment the data. Number one is the understanding of where they are in in the buying journey, right? So understanding their intent. Are they just in a research phase and they're, beginning to understand how to solve a problem? Well, you better put forth educational content to support that, right? If you're putting together feature and function type content to support that from an email perspective, like you're going to miss big time, right? So, timing, right? As it relates to where they are in the buyer journey. And then secondly is understanding, how you are going to segment. And some folks are going to segment by vertical. Some folks are going to segment by horizontal. Some folks will segment by something else that's critical to their go-to-market motion. That's important, right? Because you can create another level of personalization. Hey, in the auto industry, we've seen, these companies do X, and you may be interested in this. And then last but not least is behavioral, right? Like anything that we can interpret from the signals that we're gathering in terms of where they are spending time, what content they are consuming, right? What questions they're asking in conversational AI to then create another segment, right? Which may be something unique and different. Like you almost have to have an open mind around like, what are we interpreting here such that we can provide the next best experience? If you do that, full stop, email can be incredibly powerful, right? Because now they're leaned in. They're like, hey, the last time McKinsey was brought up here, right? I love McKinsey for that. They know who I am and they only send me uber relevant content. Right. And I'm like 3 of the 4 emails they send me, like, God, it's like they're looking over my shoulder. They're doing it right. And I'm leaning into their stuff and I'm reading it and I'm loving it. And frankly, I almost never delete it. I mean, I'm at least reading the headlines to say, okay, yep. And then I'm clicking through. So, I think that level of personalization from an email perspective, one done well, can be a huge driver. When it's not, eventually you're going to get blacklisted. They're going to stop listening. They're going to stop watching. And then they're going to say it's spam. Now you're in a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah. I very much agree with that. I would email is still the most efficient, least expensive channel to drive a lead. Like I should say, not most efficient in terms of like conversion, but in terms of like dollars in to dollars out, like it's still there. That being said, it may not always feel as effective, especially if it's done by individuals or, if you're sending the wrong types of email. So I think it comes down to 3 things in an email strategy. One, and Thad has mentioned it a couple of times, next best action. So before they receive the email, is the email the next best action? Or what were they doing before that you can tailor the email to, be complementary to that? And then what do you want them doing after? So next best action, personalization at scale. So how is every single one of your emails personalized? Not necessarily like segmentation 100%, but how do you go level beyond that and go beyond segmentation to actually to the person? And if they visited you at a trade show and then they click on a piece of content, how do you make sure that that email that you send them is related to both the fact that they visited you at a trade show and that they clicked on a piece of content on your website 2 days later when you're doing that outbound? If like you saw that happened, like and delivered more content that was similar to that, wow, like that's like a pretty powerful thing, but also really hard, to do without the power of AI and technology to support. And then the last thing I would say is connected experience. So let's just say cold email or before the cold email, what happened there? Is the email relatable to what happened before? And then after the email, where are they clicking if they take an action on the email? Is that experience after clicking on the email a personalized experience or relevant to the email that they had? Or let's just say they got the email, they clicked or they didn't click, and then they leave. And then a couple of days later, they come back to a site or talk to one of your sales reps or your customer support representatives. Is that a connected experience? Do these people know, is it in system that this person opened the email, received the email, opened the email, and clicked through these things and spent some time on these pieces of content? That's how that to Thad's point on McKinsey, like that's how they get them. Like it's all personalized. It's all connected. I bet if he reaches out to McKinsey, like they know exactly what type of a profile of a person he is and can give a really great experience there. And that's why like the title of this webinar and everything is around like personalization at scale and keeping like that engine moving. It's not just one piece of it. It has to be connected.
I love that, Lee. We got a really good question from Emmett about, the buyer's journey not always being linear. And I think, a lot of us, when we hear buyer's journey, will think of something, maybe even it's just, the buy and the awareness, consideration, that kind of classic sales marketing funnel. So understanding that, depends on your business. Any tips for, number one, just trying to create a customer, journey map or a buyer journey in today's choose your own adventure world? And then number two, how do you start to figure out where someone might be on that journey?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start there. So the journey map, I think it's really helpful to actually like have it laid out. Get a few people in a room, whiteboard it out, and like it's amazing like what you find, and when you go through different roles, like what that journey might look like. In terms of identifying like where they are in that journey, there's some great tools out there that support that through their AI models, and also by connecting to CRM and MAP, anything from Sixth Sense and SalesLoft and Clary and Gong. Obviously, like Drift is in there, but like all those tools like help support that. And the forecasting tools today, like if you don't have a forecasting tool and you do it in spreadsheets, like consider forecasting tools that link into CRM. And if reps are tracking their activity within those CRMs, or it's done automatically, that can give some like really good signals there. What you also want is like the tools that live on the website. The website is like really, a central piece for like your digital experience, regardless of the click, and the type of engagement that you can get on your website and off your website through a number of the tools that I just mentioned can give you an intent score of the level of intent that they're going to buy, or the likelihood for the prospect to buy. So those tools are out there. If anyone wants to connect with me directly, happy to share like how we use them. But we are very keen on focusing our teams, our most expensive resources, our human resources, on the accounts that have highest propensity to close or expand.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I love that question, Emmett. So thank you for that. The couple things is you do plan linearly. Like our minds only work that way as you build out a buyer journey. And by the way, think about it as multiple individuals within an account, not a single person. So that's my tip there. But you engage and you react in real time, right? To create that personalized experience as you understand these signals that are coming in. To Lee's point, there's also great technology from a lot of these ABM platform providers around intent data, right? So it's even more than your own first party and what you've gathered. Like they're working with publishers outside your walls and helping to aggregate that. And if they even never visited your website or any digital property, they can still help to score and tell you where your best customers are in a buying journey, so you can then take an action to get in front of them should they enter that motion, if you will. So huge opportunity there. And that creates tremendous efficiency around your focus, right? Number one, your media dollars, number two, and your campaign actions, number three, within an organization. So there's, that's a really loaded question, but that so much can be done to design for real-time action as it relates to those accounts and individuals that are signaling buying motions.
So that's fantastic. And we got another question here in the chat, kind of picking up on this whole consumerization notion, asking about influencers. And so I don't know if this person's thinking like, YouTube influencers like Mr. Beast, which when my 11-year-old mentioned him the other day, I thought it was like a cartoon character, but no, this guy like gives away millions of dollars of stuff every year. But so do you see an impact on influencers in B2B products? Again, like, hard hats, helmets, gloves, is there a play there? Because again, we as humans, as consumers, really connect with these influencers. Is that something we should be thinking about? And Thad, this is going to you because
okay. Well, look,
I can tell you're a TikTok man.
Yeah, I'm very much a TikTok man. My kids love Mr. Beast as well. I think I read a stat that his show is bigger than Netflix's biggest show combined. So that's an interesting thought, right? Kind of like mind-boggling, right? But look, influencers is about trust, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as we have a more digital experience, there's going to be a trust vacuum, and we're going to have to meet the needs of the buyer to shrink that. And one way to do that is through influencers, right? And the most traditional way of influencing, in my opinion, is case studies, where you actually have your customers talk about how you helped solve a problem and how great you are, right? That is an influencer. Let's not forget that, right? And that social proof persuasion is critical. What I think we're referring to today is like beyond that, like, the folks that are on TikTok or are on Instagram and not, necessarily being connected to a brand. Can that help? And absolutely it can. I think, we're just at the forefront of understanding how to leverage those individuals who are experts in specific areas such that they can engage with our brand and then tell the rest of the world that you're legitimate and trustworthy. I think there's tremendous opportunity there. I think a lot of folks are just scratching the surface. But you're seeing that through the lens of technology too, like, G2 Crowd, like things of that nature, where you're getting ratings and reviews, specifically in the technology world, less so in the manufacturing world. To create that social trust. But that's going to be absolutely critical as more and more of that buying journey, shifts to a digital motion. Is how do you shrink that gap in trust? And influencers can certainly be a way to close that gap.
Great. Well, gentlemen, we're nearing our time. I want to, give each of you an opportunity to, one key point you want people to walk away with before I wrap us up. And just, maybe 15, 20 seconds on, what's the most important thing that we've talked today you want people to remember. So, Lee, I'll turn to you first. What's the one big takeaway you want people to leave with?
Yeah, I'll leave with a heavy hitting stat. So by 2025, it's expected that 88% of all B2B sales buying journeys will occur digitally. And so going back to my first point when we did our intros, and tying in customer journey, map out your ideal customer journey in your own consumer experience. Amazon, Marriott Bonvoy, Walmart.com, Apple, whatever it is. Like, what is the process that you go through every week, every month, whenever you buy from these brands, your ideal brands? And then how does that compare to your buying journey that you've mapped out? And where can you start to pull some stuff in to make your digital journey a little bit closer to theirs? Because it's happening, and we have to prepare for it.
Love it. Thanks, Lee. Ed.
Yeah, I think that was great. And I would just add, and this is going to sound crazy, but align with finance. Like, in this world of efficiency, do more with less. Show me the money, right? Jerry Maguire, show me the money. We need to understand our speed to value and how we're impacting the business, right? The customer obsession absolutely has to be there, and that's the fastest path. But understanding how you can report to finance and the executive team to show digital performance, marketing influence pipeline, marketing influence revenue, and even closed loop, where you understand at a very detailed level, to the point Lee made, 27 contacts anonymous. Like, we're not getting any credit for that, but so much of that is driven by marketing. We need to get credit for it and surface it back up into some of our reporting, so the finance team becomes a voice for marketing to say they can drive growth. I do believe in this, and this is a way forward. So I think that's a huge opportunity that's often missed within many manufacturers, and is ripe for the picking.
Great. Thad Kalo, BOL Agency, and Lee Zucker of Drift. Gentlemen, thanks so much. This is a great session. We will send around a recording and some of the exciting and scary stats that we shared. Thanks, guys, for sharing your great expertise and your awesome energy. Appreciate it.
Enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.